Welcome back to another edition of First Fridays with the FBI. We're happy to be back. We missed you guys in January, but we're here today with our very special favorite FBI agent, Jeanette Harper. Welcome back,
Hi.
Jeanette.
Hey, thank God to be back. Happy New Year and all that good stuff.
Yeah, great. Now, I know we're going to get right into it because this is a topic that's really important, and it's financial sextortion.
Yes.
Um, so tell us about financial sextortion and how's it different than sextortion?
So, well, let's start with traditional sextortion because we've talked about that before. And you may remember it's just more of you think you're in a relationship or you've met someone online and then you've gone to this point in a relationship where now you have exchanged sexually explicit images or content videos. And then once that individual on the other end receiving end gets those, then they start threatening you for more images or more video, more content, or they're going to release the videos to your friends or family, employers, that sort of thing, all over social media. Well, now financial sextortion is what we're seeing now targeting our youth, our teenage children, even younger, and then sometimes even 7 years old. So, what this is they believe that they have these friendships online. They're being groomed to send explicit material, either pictures of themselves or, of their friends, of doing sexual acts. And once they do that, send that stuff, the receivers, the scammers, then they demand money. So they'll demand anywhere from $100, $500, $1,000, anything that the children have access to. And if they don't pay, then they threaten them to release it to friends and family and all across social media, right? So, the children in this position thinking that these pictures they had sent in private in confidence being
Mm-hmm.
sent to their entire school, right? So that's the difference of what we're seeing right now.
Okay. So I guess you kind of covered a little bit of why it happened, but I think it's a little deeper than that, I'm sure.
So it's a
So,
little deeper, and everything nowadays stems from what our children are doing online, through social media accounts, through communication platforms, and gaming platforms. Um, some of the children victims that we have talked to thought that they were actually in friendships or in a relationship with the other individual, which turns out to be a grown male. So that once they have exchanged those images, then it goes south, right? So, and then some of the other children thought, no, they thought they were just friends, but they succumb to peer pressure or bullying to provide those materials to them. They didn't think anything about it when they were asked to go to private chat rooms or something of that sort, but they just thought they were either friends or a relationship.
okay. So, what are some of the common tactics used by these predators?
So, like I said, some of the things I've said before, it's like they
Yeah.
thought they were in a relationship or in friendship. They're grooming them just like a hands-on child predator would do. Um, they are going to find what your likes and dislikes are. They're going to be the perfect person, right? They are patient and they will wait and they'll develop those relationships with you. They keep diaries of what your kids' likes or dislikes are. And it might just be in casual conversation that they develop those relationships. Now, some of the ones where they're grooming our younger children, they'll give them like little tasks, like here, why don't you send me a picture of you blowing me a kiss, or and then they just work up to the more sexually explicit, and they're like, don't worry, I won't tell your parents or something. So, but what we see is that it's so devastating because once they get that message where I'm going to release it, I want money, or we'll see children taking money from their parents' wallets,
Oh,
or they may feel so overwhelmed that they commit suicide or they
wow.
do self-harm to try to get out of the extortion. So this is what we're really concerned about. The FBI has seen over an HSI, we've received over 20,000 um, reports of victims from this, and we have seen the numbers an increased amount
Mm-hmm.
of suicides from the teenage
Oh,
boys that are
goodness.
being targeted.
Yeah. That's one of the things that most people don't talk about, the boys.
Yes.
So, who is the most targeted?
So like I said, right now what we're talking about, the financial sextortion, is we're seeing this huge increase to our teenage boys, anywhere from 14 to 17, because they believe they're in those relationships, right,
Right.
with a girl or another boy. Um, and they are more willing to pay, or the unfortunate end is the self-harm or the suicide, because they're so embarrassed and they're so ashamed that they were tricked, and they don't know how to deal with that pressure of having those pictures sent out to their friends and family and that sort of thing. Girls are still victims, but right now we're seeing a huge increase in our teenage boys. Like I said, anywhere 14, 17, and sometimes even 7 years old.
Right. Wow. Oh my
Mm.
gosh. 7.
Yes, very young.
Wow. Gosh. So obviously it's growing,
Hmm.
the financial sextortion. So what has the FBI seen here in El Paso as far as victims and predators? Like, you know
Yeah.
me, I always want to know the numbers here, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I know. I think everyone here in El Paso, we're always under this assumption that we're the third safest city in the nation, but it does happen here. And in 2023 alone, we had 20 victims report to us, and those were all teenage boys, right? So
Right.
it does happen here. There's many more that go unreported because they're just embarrassed and ashamed,
Right.
or even the parents are upset that this happened, right? So they don't report it; they just want it to go away. But it does happen here. The subjects, what we see primarily, are overseas,
Mm-hmm.
in Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, and the Philippines. But we have also seen some instances where we have predators here that are being trained from individuals overseas.
Wow.
They may not be learning, but they're targeting children from other states across the U.S. But that doesn't mean we just haven't identified any victims here within El Paso. So we do have those predators here, as well as we do have victims here.
That's just, you know, gosh.
Yeah,
So for those who are listening, see, it does happen here in El
it
Paso.
does.
Um, and I know we'll get into later, what can parents do, but so, and did you mention that about where the subjects are located?
Yes,
Yeah,
so either Nigeria, the
yeah,
Ivory Coast, the Philippines, like unfortunately they're outside the United States, but
yeah,
we do have individuals in the United States. So
right.
even here in El Paso.
That's what I wanted to hear again because
Yeah,
sometimes people just don't think it happens here.
right.
So the victims and perpetrators can also be here in El Paso.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and
um,
if you follow us on our social media or just the news, like we're all
right.
constantly putting out individuals that are traveling to see the youth in person to have sexual relationships
Right.
with them, right? So
Hmm.
we do have that hands on, but we also do have the online extortion, sextortion.
So can you touch again on I guess a little bit more in depth on what happens if they're overseas and they're doing this?
So, yeah, just because they're overseas doesn't mean that we don't have an arm into those countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have an international crimes against children task force that work
Mm-hmm.
with those other agencies in those countries. I think recently there was an individual from Nigeria that was extradited to Florida to, and he was charged with over 40 years in prison for just this thing, for financial sextortion. So, we work with those countries and we work with their extradition laws to bring those individuals back to face justice for what they've done, as far as the extortion. And if there is, heaven forbid, a death involved,
Um,
we will seek justice for the family. It doesn't replace the loss of their baby boy or baby girl,
mm-hmm.
but at least we can give them some solace that that man is behind bars now.
Wow, good. That's good. So how can you and how does the FBI kind of encourage parents
Yes.
to protect their children, and not just the parents protecting them children, but how can these teenagers, especially young boys too, protect themselves?
So I think what's a little different with this campaign is we're really trying to focus on the teens, right? We're really
Yes.
trying to focus on them. Just be careful who you trust online. Um, do not pictures happen. They're going to happen, but don't be ashamed. Don't take the extreme and take your life to get out of the situation. There's help out there. We want to help you if you are a victim, right? We want to think of the long term. There's resources out there where you can, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, of how you can take those pictures down, right? There's a life after the pictures. Now, to the parents, we can't stress this enough, that you you need to be aware of what your children are putting out there, what friendships they have, what they're doing online. Kids don't want to share that stuff all the time.
No.
And the parents were busy. Some of the parents out there are busy working, full-time jobs, retired, and they're trusting their kids. But if we have victims as young as 7, there should be some parental controls on those computers. You should be looking to see who they're talking with. You should talk to your children like, hey, if somebody's asking you to go to a different chat room and take you away from everybody else, that's a concern, and you need to tell mom and dad, right? You need to teach them, like, don't share where you live, don't share what school you go to, like, very things where they can narrow it down and try to find where you are. It's just look at their security parameters on social media, lock down those accounts. It's just things that we've talked about online safety, and we'll discuss resources of what parents can learn and how to protect their kids online.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
So, and I know you're going to list the resources, and I know it kind of goes into what victims should do, or if you know someone that's going through this. So can you share a little bit more about that?
The resources?
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, the FBI, at FBI.gov, we have a lot of resources for about financial sextortion. We've just put out a press release. There's guidance in there for parents, caretakers, right, guardians, and teens themselves. But if you don't feel comfortable going to FBI.gov, there's the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. It's called NCMEC, and they have resources for parents on how to bring up the conversation. It's under their issues tab. If there are pictures out there, there's it's called Take It Down. So you can go through that process, and NCMEC will help you take those pictures off the internet, right? So there is a service that way. The FBI also provides victim services. So we will send a counselor out there to talk with the parents and talk with the children and provide them resources on how they can overcome this, right? Your life doesn't stop at this moment, right? I mean, depending how old you are, 14, 15, you have your whole life ahead of you. And this is just a roadblock in the way, right? A speed bump.
Right.
So there is help out there to help you learn how to overcome and deal with this. The shame should not drive you to, or the stress, or not being able to emotionally handle the pressure should not be a reason for you to self-harm and to commit suicide. Like, just think of the loss and the pain that you're leaving behind if you do that. We also have the 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Hotline, and you can even text 988, right? So there's always counselors out there that you can reach out to and text to if you don't feel comfortable going to a trusted adult. So please reach out to them, and they can help you as well. But please, there are resources, and there are people out there that want to help you and to help you overcome this and move on to a more healthier, happier life.
Right. That's good. So, for you teenagers who are listening, there is help.
There is
and help. This too shall pass if
Yes.
you are going through that. So.
Yes, and I think it's very important that the parents understand, and the teenagers, like, it's not your child's fault. Right. The FBI does not consider when that teenager sends a nude picture of themselves. That's not a crime. So we're not going to go after your son or your daughter for doing that, right? They are a victim in this situation, and we are going to treat them as the victim. So don't get mad at your child. It's not their fault. It's not your fault, right? So don't beat yourself up for it as well, right? But there is help out there, and we want to make sure you guys know that we can help you overcome the shame and the fear. So reach out to law enforcement as soon as it happens. Block the user, right? Don't delete the screen captures because law enforcement is going to need that so we can go after them. And then reach out to the social media platforms and report this individual, right? So then that way they can block them from harming other children. It's part of their safety protocols. Again, that was just discussed on the Hill yesterday. So there is ways to go about. So we want screen captures. We want usernames. We want to know what platforms they were on. That way we can go after them and prevent them from causing this harm to other children.
Right, that's good. Thanks. So, is there anything else you'd like to share? Like I know, is there anything else that parents or teenagers or anywhere else that they can learn more about sextortion?
So again, like NCMEC, FBI.gov. So if you have younger children, NCMEC has a very good tool. It's called NetSmarts or In the Cloud, and that helps teach kids about online safety. So there's videos, they have little avatars in there. So that will help if you have younger children and you need to start educating them about online safety, right? So look at those tools. They're geared for different ages. And that will help you. And I said, but they also have the resources that help those conversation starters.
Right.
It's very awkward conversation to talk to your teenager about this stuff. So it helps you get ideas on how to broach the conversation with them. But once you start that conversation and kind of get through the teenage attitude, hopefully it'll make a difference. But the youth that are out there, like I know my son's 14, he doesn't really want to talk to me too much. But I'm like, I'm like, bud, you got to be careful who you talk to. If they ask you, let me know, and then we're gonna start talking. Me as Mama Bear is gonna start looking into that individual and reporting them and going forth because I don't want them to fall into that trap. Like there's enough going on in daily life for teenagers and having to deal with financial sextortion.
Exactly. So, well, I really appreciate
Of course,
you.
anytime.
We're going to have a lot of things going on this year. We're hoping to start some initiatives, prayerfully by summer, with the FBI, so to help spread the message even further.
Yes. So and we forgot to mention NCMEC. If you don't follow them on social media, you should. They had a tweet and I even put it on the FBI's El Paso's social media accounts yesterday that had a timeline of a financial sextortion incident. So there's a child that was reached out at 8:07. By like 10 o'clock, they were demanding photos. He sent photos, and then they were demanding more. And by midnight, the conversation stopped. But then you see where the next morning, the subject reaches out to the boy's girlfriend, sends the photos to the girlfriend. The girlfriend says, yes, that's my boyfriend. How did you get this? And then they start demanding money from the girlfriend. And they're like, well, my boyfriend committed suicide last night, right? So between 8 o'clock and midnight, that boy was so devastated that he committed suicide 4 hours into the conversation. So NCMEC has a lot of good resources and a lot of good real-life testimony, and even from parents where they're devastated after their children have committed suicide. So this is a very important topic. It strikes a chord with all of us, especially like anybody, any parent or anyone out there, even us in the FBI, right? We have our own children, so we're trying to protect them as we're helping try to protect your kids as well.
Right. And we will share that information and their social media pages also. And I want to thank you again. We're going to continue this conversation, especially for our young people, especially for our young boys, here too. So we appreciate you. We're definitely looking forward to sharing the information and keeping our community and our kids safe.
Of course, anytime, Monica. It was a pleasure being here again.
Thank you.
Go Eagles.
Did you say go Eagles?
Go Golden Eagles.